We'll start the discussion, and gradually I think more of participants will come to join. You must have come across a term called LPG. LPG means what? Liberalization, privatization, and globalization. It has really become a catchword after 1990s, and the almost all the countries of the world, they have come under this influence of what is called globalization, जोटा कि हमें कहुचे जगतीकरण. And the trend of globalization, which has become a much debated topic, particularly since 1990s, it means that it may be a rich country or a poor country, it may be a developed country or a developing country or a developed country. Everybody has come in contact with this influence of globalization after 1990s. So it will be naturally very interesting to study social movements in context of globalization. Globalization ଆସିଲା ପରେ social movement रे ବା नेचर रे characteristics रे कौन कौन परिवर्तन ହେଇଛି. In a very simple term, you must be knowing globalization means throwing open the economy of a country and to link it with the world economy. And virtually the whole of the world, and then there is a single international market where every country is competing. The globalization is that state-led, centralized and planned economic development is replaced gradually by what? By a market-led, liberalized and globalized economy. And some scholars like Drej and Sen and some others also are of the view that there is an expansion of the market and virtually there is the emergence of the international market. The national economy is linked with the world economy, and this expansion of the market is among the instruments that can help to promote human capabilities. And state seems to be on the retreat. Actually, globalization ଆସିଲା ପରେ state को retreat कले धीरे धीरे there is a shrinkage in state autonomy. State boundary गुड़का धीरे धीरे संकुचित हो गला, घुंची गला, vanishing. Of course, it doesn't mean that sovereignty. No, globalization has never attacked the state sovereignty, or states have not compromised so far as their sovereignty is concerned. But one thing is that state boundaries are withdrawn so far as the economic liberalization is concerned. ଧରନ୍ତୁ ଆଗରୁ ଗୋଟେ MNC ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରି ଆସିକି ଗୋଟେ ଇକୋନୋମିକ ଭେଞ୍ଚର ବା ଗୋଟେ ଏଣ୍ଟରପ୍ରାଇଜ ଖୋଲିବା ପାଇଁ ଷ୍ଟେଟ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର ଆନୁଷଙ୍ଗିକ ପରମିଶନ ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା କରୁଥିଲା. But now there is a free flow of MNCs. Multinational corporations, they have come up. And every state is given the scope to compete in the world market. Liberalization का विशेष कर economic field रहेला. Political sovereignty is not compromised, for your information. The central role which is assigned to the state and to the bureaucratic structure of the state in the development projects. It has precluded participation of the masses and local people in solving their problems. And the movement of international capital, along with the expansion of the IT sector, for example, in technology, they have resulted in the erosion of the state boundaries. Even though some scholars say that sovereignty is also eroded, but I think in the strict sense of the term, sovereignty is not eroded. But if some scholars they say that in sovereignty is eroded, there is erosion in such state sovereignty. So there is a big void, what is Sindhastana Asila, which is caused by this retreating state, and it has necessitated a dialogue between the globalization and social movements. Boundaries, there is a big void. Is Sundastanda caused kahingi? It was caused by the shrinkage of the state boundaries. And it gave rise to a dialogue between the globalization and the social movements. Previous class social movement this is the so in this chapter we shall discuss that how globalization has impacted the social movements. So social movements they have succeeded in conveying a message clearly that any development paradigm not providing further participation will not be acceptable to them. Social movement basis people's participation. So the people they have started rejecting any project which is not giving scope for the participation. जो डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट रे लोक मानकर अंशग्रहण करबा पई कोनसी सुविधा सुजोग नाही ताकू लोक माने आ ग्रहण करबा पोजीशन रे रहिलेनी एटलीस्ट सोशल मूवमेंट ए मेसेज ता लोक मान पाखरे पहुंचेलबा इवन द डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटीज मान पाखरे पहुंचेला दैट यू मस्ट क्रिएट स्कोप फॉर पीपल्स पार्टिसिपेशन. In India there are initial doubts and apprehensions about globalization, but gradually it has went down. And today we shall find that the initial apprehensions are over and people have accepted the trend of globalization and the things which have come within its buggy. An insulated and inward directed economy, it does not seem to be an option in today's time. And today, a more plausible option seems to be shaping the trend of globalization. So powerful social movements with coordination and networking among them at local, national, and global levels, they can go a long way towards the objective. Until 1980s, many developing countries they have gone for inward-oriented growth strategies. They have relied on the state-sponsored enterprises. But after globalization has come as a very vehement trend all over the world, in 1990s, देखिए जगतीकरण धीरे धीरे आसला and saw these countries launched on the path of privatization, liberalization and deregulation. धीरे धीरे स्टेट तार बाउंड्री की श्रिंक कला एवं डीरेगुलेट कला तार जो स्ट्रिक्ट impositions gradually they have been dismantled. And also India is one of those developing countries which has seen this trend. So both the international and national factors they have influenced India's decision to follow what came to be known as the new economic policy. आपण माने new economic policy विषय अल्प बहुत सुनिचंदी. New economic policy is nothing but the product of globalization, the impact of globalization on the states. So India has gone to new economic policy. You know, our country after globalization, it was left with no other option but to approach the World Bank and International Monetary Fund for loans to avoid any economic crisis. So developing countries they have looked forward to the assistance of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund so that they can pursue the economic development goals. So they have agreed to what is called structural adjustment programs, which is a guideline imposed by the World Bank or International Monetary Fund. In order to avail the loans and assistance from them, you will have to adjust your own economic system and also your economic structures. So to avail the loans, the country had to agree to the package of stabilization and structural adjustment program. So this package gave a much needed boost to the process of economic liberalization in India. This is a worldwide phenomenon. So at least by doing so, by accepting this new economic policy or adopting the package called new structural program, new adjustment program, sorry, the impending financial collapse was avoided. You know, the economic policy which Margaret Thatcher in England and Ronald Reagan in America represented what came to be known as rolling back of the state. And you know, even the socialist bloc, it was in decline. You must have known that the very strong bastion of socialism, this Russia, communistic Russia, was disintegrated, dismembered. And you know, to some extent, also this strong socialist countries also they have adopted some capitalist measures for their economic development. So at this time, as you know, one of the greatest economists, Amartya Sen, and also Jean Desi, they are of the view that government policy at this time seems to be overwhelmingly concerned with removing counterproductive regulations. And also another scholar, Joya San, He is of the opinion that economic liberalization may hurt the interest of the disprivileged in material sense. Hence, there is need of imaginative strategies to surmount the cleavage of deprivation and inequality in the classes, castes, communities, genders, and regions. So, in this backdrop, we can find that there is a need of vigorous social movement to reorient and to demand the social commitment of the state during the post-globalization era. We have seen that in India, social movements they have played a very big role, both before independence and also after independence. We have discussed some of these points in the previous class. In the era of globalization, social movements all over the world have been active in ameliorating the conditions of the people by launching movements against both the democratic and also undemocratic states. And also some of the political movements and some of the social movements, that we can say, they have taken advantage of the opportunities which have been offered by globalization. And they have tried to create international networks. For the vast number of developing countries, high growth economic activities, which is propelled by globalization, they pose serious threat to the environment, and these activities may also lead to faster depletion of the resources. ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ ଇକୋନୋମିକ ଗ୍ରୋଥ ମାନେ ଇକୋନୋମିକ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ପ୍ରୋଜେକ୍ଟ ଗୁଡାକ ଯଦି vigorously pursue କରାଯାଏ, it may lead to environmental hazards. You must be pretty well knowing, and most of the environmentalists, ପରିବେଶବିତ ମାନେ ସେଥିପାଇଁ rapid economic growth without any hit to the environmental preservation, they actually oppose that particular economic development. The globalization trend रे कौन होला economic development projects का कितने जोरे pursue करा गला जो अनेक developing country रे there is a serious threat to the environment, the resource base, and there is a faster depletion of these resources in most of the developed countries. And globalization has started a competition among the governments of the developing countries to create better investment climate. Investment climate को किमती further करिवे, there is a states. So it is obvious that environmental safety norms are compromised in the name of higher economic growth. Economic growth ना रे अनेक जगह रे environmental safety ऊपर बा परिवेशिक निरापत्ता ऊपर बेसी दृष्टि दिया गला नहीं, which really has posed a serious threat to human survival. You see, economic development means more of mining, more of extraction of minerals, and there are a wide range of exploitation of the renewable and non-renewable sources. In parts of India, environmental pollution has reached a disastrous proportion. There are many uh, examples of water pollution. The data says that the rivers like Ganga and Jamuna, they have become polluted. And the major cause of pollution is disposal of untreated industry wastes. जो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन है इंडस्ट्रियल एफ्लुएंट गुड़ाक शिल्प शिल्पीकरण जो मैला गुड़ाक जो फैक्ट्री फैक्ट्री आसा नदी भितर छाड़देले big amount of pollution in the big rivers. So it is not only a phenomenon in case of India. Most of the developing countries, they have witnessed this type of environmental problems because of rapid economic growth in the wake of globalization. Globalization, there is a unhealthy competition for economic development. So there is a rapid, unhealthy competition among the states to grab more of economic resources, have economic growth without any hit to the environmental conservation. ताद्वारा कौन ला इंडस्ट्री गुड़ा को ग्रो कला इंडस्ट्री रो रॉ मटेरियल आसे भाई माइंस गुड़ा को एक्सप्लोर करा गला धीरे धीरे and after the industries are set up the industrial effluents or wastes they have been allowed to the rivers so that the river water also getting polluted. Air pollution also has become a terrible uh, problem for big cities. Even you must have heard how the air pollution level is very high in case of city like Delhi and all that. So water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, deforestation, these are the associated problems with industrialization. So we shall find that in the post-globalized era also a lot of social protest movements that have come up on the basis of environmental issues, which I have touched upon in the previous class, that environmental movements have become also a new social movement. So there is greater need for social movements to direct their energy, counter trends towards global inequality, increasing vulnerability of the environment and livelihood in the south, and at the global level also, the shape and nature of resistance is difficult to visualize. Most international NGOs, and mainly they are mostly concerned with the issues of poverty, human rights, both at the national level and also at the sub-national level. If we come specifically to India, the trend of globalization has also impacted the farmers, the working classes, the middle classes, and also the women. We can briefly touch upon those particular areas of discussion. Globalization also has terrible implications on agriculture. And India, as you know, is one of the agricultural countries. The backbone of the country depends on agriculture. In 1994, there was an agreement, GATT. You must have heard about that. General Agreement on Tariff and Trades, GATT. It was signed in Marrakesh in 1994. And India signed that pact and became a party to the World Trade Organization, WTO. And the agreeing parties to the GATT जो माने से चुक्ति स्वाक्षर कले, including India, reduction in subsidies and keep it to the 10% of the farmer's value output. So India, together with other countries of the third world, India is also a third world country. They have accused that the WTO or the World Trade Organization is following one discriminatory practice because the developed countries continue to give subsidies while they continue to pressurize the developing countries to cut subsidies. So really what happened because of this agreement, economies they have become subjugated to the developed world. And the developed world, the developed countries, they continue to pressurize these developing countries to cut subsidies. This is one problem with GATT. And another problem is, which affects is introduction of the protected varieties. He has either to pay compensation for the use of the seeds sent by him or to obtain permission of the breeder. As most of the plant breeders, they are multinational corporations and their main motive is profit. The only option left to the farmers is to buy the seeds again. Bichara poor farmer mane madhya, another problem with this is that MNCs, those who are the highest breeders in the agricultural field, they try to exploit them. So the farmers, those who have become the victims of this trend of globalization because of of WTO, the or GATT and other things, they have been joined by NGOs, voluntary agencies, non-government organizations in their protest against the seed food price appears to be an inevitable outcome. इस ब्रीडर माने बा सीड कंपनीज माने बा एमएनसीज मानकर एक्सप्लॉइटेशन विरुद्ध रे फार्मर्स मानन को सपोर्ट कले को माने एनजीओज कारण मु ऑलरेडी आई हैव टोल्ड यू दैट न्यू सोशल मूवमेंट रो गोटे बड़ा फीचर रहउची सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस दे हैव टेकन एक्टिव पार्ट. So when the Indian poor farmers, they have been subjugated, they have been exploited by the MNCs or multinational corporations or those who are the breeders or many seeds companies and all that. They have, in order to safeguard the interest, the in their protest against these seed companies, the MNCs. So liberalizing agricultural sector seems to be more contentious. International price of the food grains are higher than domestic price. So any rise in the food prices would hit the poor badly. Because international market price of food grain is higher. Domestic market rate is lesser. So if there is any rise in food price, the poor naturally shall suffer. So overall, the response of the rich farmers movement towards the new economic policy and India joining World Trade Organization has not been undifferentiated. शरद जोशी जे कि जने फार्मर लीडर थिले आपन तक ना सुनिथिबे शरद जोशी. He was a leader of the farmers in the western part of our country. He has welcomed the new development. He expects opportunities for farmers in the phase of liberalization. At the same time, Mahendra Singh Tikayat, who is also a farmer leader in the north, and also Nanjuda Swami in the south, they have become very apprehensive of the negative fallouts of liberalization on the agricultural sector. तो शरद जोशी to some extent ଟିକେ ଆଶାବାଦୀ ଥିଲା ବେଳେ Mahendra Singh Tikayat and also in the south the farmer leader Nanjuda Swami, they have become apprehensive about the negative fallouts of liberalization in the agricultural sector. So definitely liberalization ର କିଛି କିଛି positive impact ଥାଇପାରେ, but it is always good to be very watchful about its negative fallouts, the negative fallouts of globalization. So Indian farmers should ensure that they benefit from the opportunities offered by globalization. You know, few leaders, they have welcomed the new developments coming under globalization. But some other farmer leaders also, they have become very critical and apprehensive about its negative fallouts. So in 1990s, India has increased its exports of both the fresh and processed fruits and vegetables. As China has joined and is behind. So also India didn't want to lose opportunities. ତେଣୁ ଗ୍ଲୋବାଲାଇଜେସନ ଟ୍ରେଣ୍ଡରେ ଯୋଉ ଅପରଚ୍ୟୁନିଟି ଗୁଡାକ ଆସିଛି agricultural sector ରେ, India also tried to grab them, and Indian farmers also should have a full utilization of those opportunities. But side by side, the negative impact, for example, the exploitation by the breeders and seed companies, had to be carefully handled with. Then let us think about the working class, the laborers. Globalization, the farmer movement को impact କରୁଥିଲା, ସେମିତି worker movement को ମଧ୍ୟ it has deeply impacted. Globalization has led to the privatization of public sectors. And you know, among the main planks of the new economic policy which India has pursued are the closure of the sick and loss-making public enterprises. You know, ଅନେକ sick unit ଗୁଡାକ new economic policy ପରେ ପରେ country ବନ୍ଦ କରିଦେଲା. So the state has closed down many sick units. But what is the net result? Many workers, those who are engaged in those industries, that has in retrenchment. ତେଣୁ ସେମାନେ ଛଟେଇ ଚାକିରି ଛଟେଇ ହେଲେ ଏବଂ ଅନେକ କମ୍ପାନୀ ମଧ୍ୟ ଭଲ୍ୟୁଣ୍ଟାରୀ ରିଟାୟାରମେଣ୍ଟ ସ୍କିମ୍ ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଉପରେ ଇମ୍ପୋଜ କରାଗଲା, କହିଲେ ନାଇଁ ତମେ ଭଲ୍ୟୁଣ୍ଟାରୀଲି ତମେ ରିଟାୟାରମେଣ୍ଟ ନେଇଯାଅ. So casualization and contractualization of workers have been other accompanying phenomena of globalization. ତେଣୁ ଅନେକ ଜାଗାରେ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରାକ୍ଟ ଆଉ କାଜୁଆଲ ଲେବରର୍ସ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ରଖାଗଲା. ଆମର ବି ଏବେ ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି postings and all that ହଉଛି, so that it has become a very frequent feature after globalization has asserted. Hello,
Yes, sir.
hello.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So, okay,
So,
okay. I am now. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଶୁଭିଲା ତ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ମୁଁ ମୋର ମୋବାଇଲ କନେକ୍ଟ କଲି କାରଣ କମ୍ପ୍ୟୁଟରଟା ଟିକେ କେମିତି ମଝିରେ ମଝିରେ ହ୍ୟାଙ୍ଗ ହେଇଯାଉଛି। ଓକେ, ସୋ ନାଉ you are getting me clearly? Hello?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Then. So we shall find that this is how it has impacted the working class. You know, our structural adjustment program, our government state accept kala after this trend of globalization and new economic policy and all that. Many sectors they have the vacancies they have been reduced. So many workers they also face retrenchment. So this is how the trend of globalization has impacted the worker section. And you know, liberalization also means relaxation in government control over the private sector, as a result of which the bargaining power of the labor vis-a-vis the capital has come down. So you shall mark that there have been strikes by the trade unions to protect the interest of the workers in the state electricity boards, in ITDC hotels, nationalized banks, etc. So the introduction of the new economic policy, it has exposed the weaknesses of the working class movement. Then another important thing is the globalization also has impacted the middle classes. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମେ ତାର impact ଆମେ farmers ଉପରେ ଦେଖିଲେ, working class ଉପରେ ଦେଖିଲେ. Now also we shall touch upon that. It has also impacted the middle class. So far the job front is concerned, the story is not that dismal, because globalization has also unfolded big opportunities for also lots of people. You know, middle class ମାନଙ୍କ ଉପରେ ତାର ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରଭାବ ଆମେ ମାର୍କ କରିବା compared to farmers or working class, the story or the picture is not that dismal, because in most of the sectors also globalization has opened up new opportunities for the job. And this is especially true about people having degrees from the famous IITs and IIMs, who in big demand both in India and also outside India. They got very good job opportunities. The students from these premier institutions like IITs or IIMs, they walk away with unheard of pay packets. ତା ଦ୍ୱାରା ଏବେ ବି ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା IITs ମାନଙ୍କରେ କୁହନ୍ତୁ IIM ମାନଙ୍କରେ ଯୋଉ ବ୍ରାଇଟ୍ ବଏଜ୍, they could find jobs with better package, not only in the country but also outside the country. So India churns out more than 70,000 institutions and 70,000 computers professionals every year, in addition to the graduate from the IITs. And Indian software companies, they employed nearly 1,60,000 professionals during 1998-99. This was the data given. And also, we shall find that the people from the disadvantaged sectors, they do not have the means to afford quality education offered by these higher institutions at a higher price. Thus, the introduction of the new economic policy has marginalized a larger section of the population, as they have not the necessary skill to benefit from the opportunities offered by globalization. କାରଣ ଲାର୍ଜର ସେକ୍ସନର ଲୋକମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଗୋଟେ ହାୟର ଇନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନକୁ ଯିବା ପାଇଁ ତାଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ଏତେ ରିସୋର୍ସ ନଥିଲା, and that is the reason that the opportunities offered by those institutions after getting education in those institutions, they could not make avail of those opportunities. So to make the marginalized partners in the bounty offered by the globalization process, there is need of big investment in imparting that kind of skills in them, but they do not lag behind aspirants from privileged sections of the society. This trend of globalization also has its own impact on the women section of the society. Sometimes some of the scholars, they have argued that globalization is a trend or ideology committed to production for profit, which leads to relative or absolute deprivation of women, colonies, and marginal groups and communities. Feminists in developed countries, they're fighting for recognition of the value of the goods and services produced by them in homes. The feminist leaders, they are also fighting for men's equal participation in such works. କାରଣ ଆପଣମାନେ ଫେମିନିଜମର ଟ୍ରେଣ୍ଡ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଜାଣିଥିବେ, ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଫେମିନିଜମ ଡିଟେଲ୍ସ ବିଷୟରେ କହି ହେଉନି, କିନ୍ତୁ ୟୁ ମଷ୍ଟ ବି ନୋଇଂ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ହାଉ ରାଡିକାଲ ଫେମିନିଷ୍ଟ they have gone with a slogan that personal is political. ଏବଂ ଘରେ ଯେ ଡୋମେଷ୍ଟିକ ୱାର୍କ ସେ ଯେଉଁ ଏନଗେଜ ରହୁଛନ୍ତି ୱିମେନ୍ ମାନେ, that is also a productive labor, but it has gone unrecognized. ତାକୁ ଠିକ ସେ ରିକଗ୍ନିସନ ମିଳୁନାହିଁ. So the phenomenon of globalization, its commitment to commercialization, modernization, export-oriented development, growing reliance on private sector, and the obsession with the profit motive, it has adversely affected the cause of women, the interest of the women. The suppression of women from participation in social, political, and economic life, it hurts the society as a whole, not just women. And women have become very active in demanding and protecting their rights. Social movements in general and women movements in particular should exert enough pressure on government so that proper policies for women emancipation should be made. In India, because of globalization, industrial growth, it has increased, which provide employment in informal sectors. Hence, workers got fragmented and compete among each other for security and job. It also very adversely affect the organized struggles. So, what we have is a localized working class movement. Because of the increased international network of activities for human rights, transnational collective action has increased. International pressure also has been mounting on the national issues. For example, international pressure against Gujarat communal violence, then support to the Narmada Bachao Andolan, which was led by Medha Patkar. There are some of the examples that how international pressure also has been mounting on these issues, national issues. So to sum up, it can be said that rolling back globalization doesn't seem to be a plausible option. Globalization seems to be perpetuating old inequalities. ତେଣୁ ଗ୍ଲୋବାଲାଇଜେସନ ଆସିଲା ପରେ ଯେ ଓଲ୍ଡ ଇନଇକ୍ୱାଲିଟି ଗୁଡାକ ଦୂର ହେଇଗଲା ସେଟା ବି ଭାବିବା ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଭାବରେ ଅମୂଳକ. In spite of the globalization and its promises, the old inequalities they continue. Rather, side by side, new type of inequalities they have come up. The state policies should aim at imparting education and other technical skills to the disadvantaged sections like Dalits and women, because this can only help them to develop a sense of partnership in progress. So now we must have some idea on state, market and social movements. କାରଣ ଆଗରୁ ଇକୋନୋମିଟା ବେଶୀ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ଡ୍ରିଭେନ୍ ଥିଲା, ଆମେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଗ୍ଲୋବାଲାଇଜେସନ ପରେ ଦେଖିବା ବେଶୀ ମାର୍କେଟ ଡ୍ରିଭେନ୍ ହେଲା. And there is also the changing status of the Indian state. State ର nature, state ର activity, state ର function, they have been redefined. With the changes in the society and economy of India, the number of social groups taking recourse to collective action also increases. ତେଣୁ social movement ଗୁଡାକୁ ଠିକ ଭାବରେ ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ବା ମୋଟିଭେଟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ more of NGOs, voluntary agencies, civil society groups, they have come up. So if we look towards the changing status of the Indian state, we can have a look to the status of the state before independence and after independence. State ର trajectory ବା direction କୁ ଆମେ ସ୍ୱାଧୀନତା ପରେ mostly ଦିଟା phase ରେ ଆମେ divide କରିପାରିବା. The trajectory of the Indian state after independence can be divided into two phases. And this can be done in the context of the relationship of the state with the market and the social movements. गोटे होची प्री 1990s आ गोटे होची पोस्ट 1990s. आमे अल्पे बहुत ग्लोबलाइजेशन सेटा भी एबे से पोर्शन को टच कले. स्वाधीनता परे 1990 पूर्ववर्ती status of the state and what was the status of the state after 1990s. Karana 1990s is a dividing line because globalization took place. You know, आमे एटा को डिमार्केट जो करूचे, just it can be helpful for us in comprehending the relationship among them, because the issue about the relative weaknesses, strength, the relevance of the state or irrelevance of the state and market, it has become more spectacular during the era of liberalization or era of globalization. इंडिपेंडेंस रो परे परे विशेष करी हमें देखिया प्रथम 20 वर्ष 2 decades the state was given a dominant place in the development model. एठी मोटे रेफरेंस आपन देबी से मॉडल ता ना होची आपण माने भी सुनी थिबे नेहरू महालानोबिस मॉडल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट. This model was developed by the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and P.C. Mahalanobis, which is a development economist. This model gave prominence to the state, and this model sought to build India a strong nation state. The market was supposed to depend on the state. देखो market context रे state रो dominance टा को एठी हमें विचार करिया को जाउछे. The market was supposed to depend on the state for its existence. The market is to be regulated by the state regulations. It must get the license from the state, permission from the state. So this model, that is Nehru Mahalanobis model, it gave prominence to the state organs, especially bureaucracy. जोटा कि हमें कहूचे permanent executive, permanent government, the steel frame of the government, bureaucracy ऊपर बेसी importance देला. This Nehru Mahalanobis model, it envisaged that it would lead to overall development of the country and eliminate the differences and hierarchy based on social cleavages, that is caste, religion, language, race, region, economic disparity and all that. And in the macroeconomy, it gave preference to the industry over the agriculture or the rural sector. These are some of the features of Mahalanobis model. The post-1990 phase, that is the era of liberalization from 1990, it has seen the decline of the state authority. एनु महालनोबिस मॉडल जोटा कि मार्केट को स्टेट रो अंडर रे रखुतला. This scenario has completely changed. After the advent of globalization, we shall find there is a decline of the state authority. So the state followed the policy of structural adjustment program, and it was introduced by Narasimha Rao government in 1991. And prior to 1990s, things were different. But after 1990s, the phase is marked by parallel rise of the market force. देखो तो आओ market force टा को हमें state रो अंडर रे तार डोमिनेंस रे आसीबा रो गोटे पोजीशन नथिला. Market has gradually acquired more of prominence, more of importance. Civil society is now getting prominence. Simply speaking, pre-1990s, state authority has a parade, a glorious march. But after 1990s, the market force, there is a rise of market force. Civil society organizations, they have come up, which have eroded the monopoly of the state. This is the basic thing. This is the basic difference between the pre-1990 and post-1990 developments. So, the scholars who followed development, modernization perspective, they did not use the concept of state to study the polity of the countries, especially decolonized or developing third world countries. The scholars, they sought to understand the institution and process of the political system. And the main argument is that different constituents of the political system, they conflict and adjust with each other, and in the process of the system remains resilient and maintain itself. So there is a changing status of the market. Jimti monopoly of the state decline kala, simti market status madhya, it has undergone a change. Market को secondary position हिसाब रे ग्रहण करा जाय पे ताको secondary position दिया जाय पारु नहीं. The market not only had to depend on the state leadership and bureaucracy for clearance, licenses, or it need not operate under what is called Inspector Raj. It also had no major role in measurement for the various sections of the society. So there is a search for an alternative to the state as an agency for carrying out development and democracy started. The structural reforms which I am repetitively referring to, in a sense, they became euphemistic so far as the function of the market is concerned. Like in the case of the success or failure and nature of the state, the reaction to the markets is also divided. If there are supporters of the market forces, also they have their critics also. In the state ro mode critics achandi, in the market ro influence ba tar importance ko mode criticize kariya pai mode onek scholar baharle. There are opponents to these market forces. For example, the critics, they include diverse forces like the leftist intellectuals, the leftist organizations, then the Swadeshis opposed to the foreign market, the section of the Dalit spokesmen, and also the section of the environmentalists, etc. So, the changes in the statuses of the state and the market, they have occurred in a new context. The features of this context are decline of the Cold War, disintegration of the socialist bloc, that is USSR, in 1990s, rise of civil society organizations, NGOs and voluntary organizations. So these developments resulted in the erosion of the monopoly of the state as the principal agency of working for the welfare of the society. And welfare of the society विषय चिंता करिया पई आगु स्टेट जो मोनोपोलिस्टिक रोल नहीं थिला, it has been challenged. That the market, the civil society organizations, they have also. So while the question about the efficacy of the state and market, whether one is more important or the other, like that, this is the question. It continued to be debated. The significance of the civil society organizations, they have become enormous throughout the world. Also, there are questions raised about the role of NGOs. जे आमे यदि स्टेट रो मोनोपोली की क्वेश्चन करछे, whether the NGOs or civil society organizations also can have a very dependable role so far as the welfare of the people is concerned. The question whether the NGOs alone can deliver the goods to the people or they have do so in collaboration of the state or market are being raised. NGO by voluntaries माने कोन एका चाहिले सब किछि वेलफेयर करि परिबे, or they'll have to take the help of the state or the market forces. These questions also gradually come up and also they are debated. So the growing significance of the civil society, which exists along with the state and market, working either independently or in collaboration with them, it has become one of the principal focus of academic discourse and political activism. So the question is, are the social movements related to this changing status of state and market? Because our topic is social movement. Now we can come up that with the changed status of the state and market, are the social movements related to this changing status of the state or changing status of the market? Some argue that the social movements, especially the new social movements, माने धरन्तु women movement कहन्तु, environmental movement कहन्तु, along with the rise of the identity movements, they have emerged as a result of globalization. But when you go with the discussions, or you can further your analysis on the issues, you will find that there have been collective actions of different groups even before the present phase of globalization was introduced in India in 1990s. आमे खाली जदि कहबा जे 1990 ହେଲା तापरे ग्लोबलाइजेशन आसला तापरे the role of civil society organization they have been activated, it is not a complete truth, because some of the civil society organizations, they have also been active prior to the advent of globalization in 1990s. जगतीकरण पूर्व मध्य they are engaged in various positive roles. So it is not always possible to relate the social movement to the globalization. सब बेले जे हमें सोशल मूवमेंट ग्लोबलाइजेशन आसला पर एक्टिविटी हला बा सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन मान ताको फर्दर कले ई प्रकार जो रिलेट करबा दिटा के जिंस सब बेले इट्स नॉट द ट्रुथ, इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल. But if we place the issues and collective action of various groups in the context of changes in the political economy, including globalization, it can help us to understand the social movement better. So we can contextualize the social movement with some examples. Like The relationship of the social movement, the state and market can at best be seen in certain ways, in some of the following ways. The state's ability to meet the aspiration of the people and their representation in the state agencies or organs, and with the market. The personalization of the state institutions by the political executive groups, along with the growing corruption, resulted in the, for example, Navnirman movement in Gujarat or Jaiprakash movement, etc. In our country, must be knowing these movements, which is known as total revolution. But unlike the latter decades, the mobilization of these movements was done by the political parties, mainly the opposition or the non-Congress parties. So mobilization of the masses up to 1960s had been done mainly by the political parties or organizations related to the political parties. And since the 1970s, different social groups, they came to be mobilized by the non-party or apolitical organizations. Though in the due course of time, they became political. So the issues raised by these movements are related both to the state and also to the market. They are related to the state as the state has been held responsible for neglecting them and thus forcing them to launch social movements. From 1990s, for example, onwards, the issue of reservation in the private sector has also been added to the agenda of the Dalit leaders and political organizations. They apprehend that privatization as a part of the globalization will result in the reduction of the government jobs. So they argue that in the light of the shrinkage of government jobs following the privatization, reservations should be provided to Dalits in the private sector. So this demand is, however, resented by the representative of the market. Market को जो मैंने represent करूँଥିଲେ, सेमाने इस प्रकार demand को they have negated. They have resented to this. But again, this issue has not resulted in a sustained collective demand or action of the Dalits. So the social movements might not have been caused directly due to the action of the state and market. Their changing nature and status to provide a context to comprehend the social movements. Some of the movements we can think of so that we can better have a better grasp of the journey of the social movements in our country. One of the important movement is Dalit movement. Dalit movement आम समझते अल्पे बहुत है. We are all acquainted. So, in recent years, there has been a growth of the academic interest in Dalit mobilization movements in India. So who are the Dalits? Dalit, actually, you must be going through your texts by knowing. So we shall find that Dalit is a Marathi word which literally means ground, broken to pieces. And this word, this term Dalit was first popularized by Dalit Panthers in Maharashtra, which they meant the scheduled caste populations. You know, there later on there have been a lot of attempts which has broadened this definition of this term Dalit to the oppressed classes. So Dalit generally refers to the scheduled castes alone. The castes in Hindu Varna system, they're outside this Varna system, outcasts. And they're also known as anti-Sudras. ଆମେ ବର୍ଣ୍ଣାଶ୍ରମ ଧର୍ମରେ ପଢିଛେ କାଷ୍ଟ ସିଷ୍ଟମର ଯୋଉ ହାଇରାର୍କି ତାର ବାହାରେ ଯୋଉମାନେ ରହୁଥିଲେ ଭର୍ଚୁଆଲି they are outcasts, they are considered as untouchables, considered as impure. There are even some people though include the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and OBCs and even other converted minorities. So how this hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Say because in between there is some network problem and all that. Okay. So Dalit movement is naturally is one of the most popularly discussed among the academicians. The word Dalit means mostly untouchables, which is originally speaking a Marathi word and all that. And you know, at present also the term includes the scheduled caste and all some other OBCs and all that, mostly untouchables, which were the word term was popularized by the Dalit Panther, one organization in Maharashtra. The Dalits not only belong to the lower caste category, but also they belong to the lower class category of the Indian society now. So gradually the very definition has been broadened and all that. And you know, uh, we shall find that uh, as a result of the policy of protective discrimination and elite, mainly middle class, it has emerged among the Dalits. And it is this elite who have been the main beneficiaries of the state policies. Prior to independence, there is one organization in the all India level. Ambedkar, B.R. Ambedkar, who is the father of our Indian Constitution. He initiated the articulation of the Dalit interest for the first time in 1920s. 1920 मसीहा पर during this 1920s. And prior to Ambedkar, also there are attempts to bring about reforms in the conditions of the Dalits. For example, Jyotiba Phule Maharashtra, but it was an attempt towards reform rather than towards mobilizing the Dalits for political objective. And All India Scheduled Caste Federation in 1942 uh, it was formed. Congress was the primary organizations which was piloting this in freedom struggle, the movement, freedom movement struggle and all that freedom movement. Though Congress talked about the necessity of removing untouchability, it did not articulate any concrete demand or program to protect the interests of the depressed classes of the Dalits. In contrast, mobilization by Phule and Ambedkar in 1930s was firmly based on the belief that unless the caste system is destroyed, the social evil of untouchability cannot end. That is why All India Scheduled Caste Federation was formed by Ambedkar, and he formed several organizations also earlier. And the most important being the Indian Labour Party, ILP. The ILP was an organization of a different kind in the sense that it aimed and attempted to mobilize a broader section of the Indian society and not exclusively the Dalits. So he formed the ILP probably because he was convinced that a wider support base than the scheduled caste was essential, and hence he embarked on a more class-like strategy. So that way, this class-like strategy can invite more of people, and this particular basis can be brought. More of Dalits or the oppressed classes can be included. Post-Indian independence foray, but after the independence, in that period, there are also significant developments in the history of Dalit mobilization. You know, there are a lot of agitations. The AISCF, All India Scheduled Caste Federation, was dissolved, and the Republican Party of India was formed in 1957. The party, which is the first of its kind, accepted the fundamental provisions of the Constitution and vowed to pursue the objective through medium of parliamentarian democracy. Then by the mid of 1960s, it had established itself in the state of Maharashtra. RPI, the Republican Party of India, and also in Uttar Pradesh. And these are the states in which it had a strong presence. And very soon, however, the RPI weakened largely because of the. So the analysts say that the RPI was a failure. And the failure of this RPI, that Republican Party of India, to keep up the lofty ideals of Ambedkar and to fulfill the aspiration of the Dalit youths led to the formation of the Dalit Panthers in Bombay in 1972. So failure of RPI Republican Party of India to fulfill the aspirations of the Dalit has led to the rise of Dalit Panthers in Bombay in 1972. And the Dalit Panthers drew its inspiration from the writings of Ambedkar and Marx. Then in this Dalit movement, itself incomplete unless there is a reference to Bahujan Samaj Party. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Audible? Okay.
Subhuji,
Okay.
sir.
ठीक है. So unless we have a reference to this Bahujan Samaj Party, it will be very difficult to grasp the real importance of this Dalit movements in our country. Formation of the Bahujan Samaj Party was done by Kansiram in 1984. Naturally, RPI प्रथमे एथिला हमर ऑल इंडिया शेड्यूल कास्ट फेडरेशन तापर हला it was done by Ambedkar, then Republican Party of India, then we shall find that they could not march ahead in this their programs of mobilizing the Dalits, but rather Bahujan Samaj Party in UP. It was formed in 1984 by Kansiram. It marks a new beginning in the history of Dalit mobilization. You know, formation of this party, Bahujan Samaj Party, it has not only succeeded in establishing a stronghold in some states, in other states, but it has also been able to form government along with its pre and post-electoral allies in critically important states like Uttar Pradesh. So the formation of this Bahujan BSP or Bahujan Samaj Party was deliberate. It has its root in the Government Employees Federation called BAMCEF, that is Backward and Minority Central Government Employees Federation. Just you have to remember it, which was formed in 1978 by Kansiram in Punjab, but later on extended to Uttar Pradesh. The most important decision which was taken in the course of formation of this Bahujan Samaj Party was the formation of the Dalit Shoshit Sangharsh Samaj Samiti, which is known as DS4. S4 means there are 4 S. Dalit Shoshit Sangharsh Samaj Samiti. 4 S they are present. That is in abbreviated form. It is known as DS4. S4 means Shoshit Sangharsh Samaj Samiti, and the first word is D, stands for Dalit. Please remember, you can find it from your texts and other writings and all that. So DS4 in 1981 it was formed. Dalit Shoshit Sangharsh Samaj Samiti. The formation of this organization was of critical importance, considering that it is through this organization Kansiram tried to increase his influence among other sections of the society, means even among non-Dalits. So this is the most important observation, that Kansiram through this DS4 in 1981 has tried to influence other sections of the society. So DS4 in fact served as the organizational base for the formation of BSP and took up political issues gradually. So having set the stage and ground, Kansiram inaugurated the BSP on the 14th of April 1984. and he acquired a very useful partner when he persuaded Mayavati to join the party in Uttar Pradesh. And joining of Mayavati in this Bahujan Samaj Party in Uttar Pradesh became crucial for BSP, because with this the party was able to get solid leader in a state. And Mayavati has studied in Meerut and Delhi universities, and also he was the teaching profession, and she has left the job to become a full-time politician. Her family actually was associated with this Republican Party of India, RPI, which I have just referred to for some time in Uttar Pradesh also. So far as the political victory is concerned, in 1989 Lok Sabha election followed, and the BSP, that is the party, fared quite well by securing 3 seats with 2.4% all India votes from the 235 Lok Sabha constituencies. So virtually it has a very tremendous victory. With this impressive performance in 1989, the Bahujan Samaj Party was able to become the 6th All India party in terms of votes polled. So it continued its electoral gains. It became successful in getting itself recognized as a national party by the Election Commission in 1997. When the grassroots level धीरे धीरे party को national party ने importance gradually पाएगा because of the able leadership of Kansiram and then Mayavati. BSP ideology has to be understood in the background of overall effort made towards mobilization of the Dalits since the national movement in India. It must be noted that in the beginning, that its ideology has been shifting from time to time according to the needs and the necessities. BSP ideology can best be described as vague according to some of the scholars. And one scholar has argued that there is no clear ideology in the program and functioning of the party. The sole thrust is on the breaking of the caste system after acquiring state power. So sometimes some critics say that because of this vagueness, it is very difficult to analyze its ideology or difficult to comment on its ideology. But ideologically, Bahujan Samaj Party draws heavily from the philosophy of Ambedkar, and to a large extent from the speeches of Kansiram and Mayavati. In Kansiram's opinion, the Brahminical social order that exists in the Aryan in its origin, and the Aryans evolved this social order after invading India and subjugating the original inhabitants of the Mul Nivasi, that is the Dravidians in the country. And after the Aryans' conquest, the Dravidians were reduced to level of untouchables. That was the interpretation of Kansiram. How the Dravidians have been subdued by the Aryans and they have been reduced to the level of untouchables in the interpretation of Kansiram. So this social order that came into being after Aryan conquest to Kansiram is based on caste and not class. So it rests upon falsehood and release myth. Of course, BSP has its own problems and limitations also. One of the most serious problems which the Bahujan Samaj Party has confronted is the problem of ideology, which I have said that most of the critics say that they have no concrete ideology. The ideology is vague. it appears that the BSP has an exclusive ideology. It has a program for the Dalits in the country, but not for the vast masses of the poor, even though it claims that it represents the majority or the Bahujan. Bahujan अर्थ होची majority, बहुत ज़्यादा. But virtually, the basis is myopic. It only safeguards the interests of the very minor sections of the society, the Dalits of the society. And secondly, the ideological program does not contain any economic program for the country. And that is why it has become difficult for the BSP to pursue or give direction to economic policies. Clear cut economic policy BSP ପାଖରେ କିଛି ନଥିଲା. This second problem with the BSP is that it is a leader-centric party. It is another problem some critics have analyzed. It is a leader-centric party. So it has adequate number of leaders and functionaries. Yet the party, in essence, was led by the Supreme Kansiram and to some extent by Mayawati. Other leaders virtually have no say as far as its policy decisions are concerned. So this is a problem. You know, even this is a problem which we have already noted so far as the RPI is concerned. That is why Republican Party of India was a failure. The most serious problem with Bahujan Samaj Party is the limited social base. Despite all the talks of the Bahujan Samaj and all the claims that BSP will represent 85% of the population in the Indian society, the fact remains that in North India it remained a political party of Chamars and Jatav. And the Chamars, they constitute the backbone of the BSP support. We have seen earlier that the Chamars and the Jatavs in UP, they are the most politicized of the castes in the state. And it is only this caste which has benefited from the policy of the reservation. So, in spite of the claim that BSP says that it's a broad-based party, it has only catered to the needs of the interest of the very limited segment of the society. It does not represent the interest of the Valmikis or the Pasis, who are the poorest among the Dalits, but it represents only the elite among the Dalits. ତେଣୁ ଦଳିତ ମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ଯୋଉମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ poorest ଥିଲେ ବା downtrodden ସେମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଯୋଉ image ଥିଲା the poorest of the Dalits, they are not represented by the party. ତାଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ଯୋଉମାନେ elite section ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ ହିଁ represent କରୁଥିଲା BSP. This is a very serious problem with them. So these are some of the problems. It was leader-centric. It has a very limited social base, and also there is a problem of ideology. Basically, these are the three major problems with the Bahujan Samaj Party. So this is all about the Dalit movement, that how the term Dalit was first used by the Dalit Panther in Maharashtra, and what does it mean, and how this political mobilization of the Dalits was done in the pre-independence period and in the post-independence period, with the reference to the role of Bahujan Samaj Party UP, so far as the Dalit politics is concerned. Then we can also, side by side with the Dalit movement, there are also other backward movements, other backward classes. Who are the backward classes? ଆପଣ ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ untouchable concept ଟା ବେଶୀ caste structure ବସିଛି, We have already discussed that how during the Aryan time, because of the Varnasrama, the four types of castes they have been referred, and those who are not included in this Varnasrama, they are outcasts, the untouchables. So Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, and they are termed as anti-Sudras or the auspicious, the untouchables. But class is something different sociologically. So who are the backward classes? Dalit concept of caste सहित जड़ित ଥିଲା. But other oppressed section of the society are also the other backward classes. One of the scholars, Mark Galanter, he has written a book that is called Competing Inequalities, Law and the Backward Classes in India. He has analyzed that backward classes is a very loose concept. Sociologically, these classes consist of large number of backward castes which remain above the scheduled castes and below the upper castes. Backward castes those who can be kept in between, they can be kept above the scheduled castes, but they can be kept below the upper castes. So in between these backward classes can be placed. So these constitute the intermediary castes, rather the cultivating castes, artisans, service castes. So in traditional social and economic structures, while the intermediary castes, they were involved in the production process in the land, service castes and artisans provided services to the society. The backward classes known as the other backward classes, OBCs, they are other than these backward classes, which include the Dalits, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and the principal intermediary OBCs are Jadavs. Please mark this. The principal other backward classes are Jadavs, Kurmis, Puris, Gujars, and Jats in North India. States like UP, Bihar, Rajasthan. And some of them also are in Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. Then Kappus, Kamaj, Reddys, Lingayats, Mudalias in South Indian states. North Indian state, OBC, Yadavs, Kurmis, Kuris, Gujars, Jats, etc. In South Indian states, Kapus, Kamas, Reddys, Lingats, Mudalias. In South Indian states like Andhra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, etc. So these are mostly the definitions of the or which section of the society are coming within this ambit of OBC, other backward classes. So in fact, other backward classes include heterogeneous caste groups, various types of caste groups, with the differences in their social and economic conditions and political participation. What is the impact of the state policies on the socio-economic conditions of the backward classes? The backward classes emerged as a powerful social, economic, and political bloc during the post-independent period. And particularly as a result of these policies of the state. While the intermediary castes came to control the affairs of the villages in society, basically countryside manande, intermediate castes, they came to control the affairs of the village society. The artisans, the service castes joined the rank of the marginalized groups of the wage laborers, marginal and poor farmers. And even though the upper backward or the intermediate castes, they also are undergoing differentiation in terms of economic and educational entitlements in political terms. So it must be emphasized that among the state policies, it was the Green Revolution which has the most remarkable impact on the rural economic and political life. And most of the groups affected by this, they belong to the upper backward classes. Please remember, it is the Green Revolution which has affected this life of the rural poor, other backward, the members of the other backward classes in rural sector. You know, other backward classes ଲୋକମାନେ ବିଭିନ୍ନ economic category ର ଅନ୍ତର୍ଭୁକ୍ତ. They do not belong to a single economic category. They belong to distinct economic categories, to the middle classes, to the artisans, to the service castes. And another factor is related to the changes in the socio-economic conditions of the backward classes, the rise of the middle classes among the OBCs. This is another indication. The rise of middle classes in also OBCs. So despite the failure of the education policies of the state, a group of educated persons who became their spokesperson had emerged among the backward classes. କାରଣ ଏଜୁକେସନ ପଲିସିରୁ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଟିକେ ଫାଇଦା ନେଇକି ଅଳ୍ପ କିଛି ଏଜୁକେଟେଡ ତାଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ହେଲେ, they became their spokesperson. Of course, this group was very small, not a big one. In North India, Charan Singh, SD Singh Chaurasia, Chaudhary Brahma Prakash, they were some of the spokespersons of the backward classes belonging to the early decades of following the independence. Independence ପରେ ଏମାନଙ୍କ ନାଁ ଆପଣମାନେ ବି ଅଳ୍ପ ବହୁତ ଶୁଣିଥିବେ. Chaudhary Brahma Prakash, Charan Singh, they belong to this category of spokespersons for the interest of the other backward castes in North India. ତେବେ ଆମେ ଗୋଟେ ନର୍ଥ ସାଉଥ ର ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ସ ମାନଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ଏ ବ୍ୟାକୱାର୍ଡ କ୍ଲାସ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ର ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ରେ ଆମେ ଚର୍ଚ୍ଚା କରିପାରିବା. That how they differ, what is the distinction, we can compare the trends of these movements. In comparison to the North India, backward classes in South India were mobilized much earlier. And backward class movement are South state manakre mein ago thiba, earlier it has come up. They not only got reservation in government jobs, but they are also mobilized into the social movement and entered politics in South India much before the backward classes in North India. This has been corroborated by various authors, by various scholars. For example, in some of the texts we can find a reference to Christophe Jaffrelot. He has written a book, India's Silent Revolution, the Rise of the Low Castes in North India Politics. He attributes the early rise of backward classes in South India and the late rise in North India, the process of ethnicization and Sanskritization respectively. କାରଣ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରୋସେସ ଗୁଡାକ ସୋଶାଲାଇଜେସନ ପ୍ରୋସେସ, ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି ଏଥନିସାଇଜେସନ, ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି ସାଂସ୍କ୍ରିଟାଇଜେସନ. You must be knowing that how through Sanskritization the members of the lower caste group, they try to internalize the cultural patterns of the higher class, sorry, upper caste members. That is the process of Sanskritization. M.N. Srinivasankar jane madhya sociology bohi सब पढ़िचंती, he has a reference to the Sanskritization. You know, through this ethnicization, the backward classes of South India, they questioned the Brahminical domination and sought to replace it with that of the backward class of the Dravidians. ସେମାନେ Brahminical dominance को ସେମାନେ question କରିଛନ୍ତି ଏବଂ କହୁଛନ୍ତି the Dravidian dominance should be there. It should be replaced by the Dravidians. And also, they sought to replace it with this particular concept. And also, there is a revolt against Sanskritization in South. They not only got reservation in the public institutions, they replaced the Brahminical domination in politics also, as compared to North Indian states, where reservation for the OBCs were introduced from 1970s. The South of India states, they have completed the process of granting reservation by 1960s. You know, reservation process 1960 सुद्धा southern states मैंने accept कर सकते, whereas in North Indian states, it was introduced only in 1970s. So South Indian states were much ahead in giving reservation to these OBCs, or the backward class sections of the society. So, very simplistically, we can differentiate the difference between the North and the South. Brahmins had monopolized the high caste domination over the low castes in South in India. And that number in comparison to the Brahmins of North India was much smaller. In contrast, the Brahmins were not the only high castes in North India. We shall find that domination over the low castes was shared and diluted by several other high caste groups like Rajputs, Kayasthas, or even Vaishyas. You know, North India, Brahminical dominance, it was rather diluted by other high caste groups also, which has not happened in the case of South. So, the most effective expression of Dravidian revolt against the Brahmins domination, Brahminical domination in South was provided by, you must have heard about self-respect movement. The leader of this movement was E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, जिनको पेरियार बोली बात E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, who led the particular movement named as self-respect movement in South during 1920s and 1940s. The self-respect movement based on this premise that original inhabitants of India were non-Brahmins or the Dravidians, not the Brahmins. You know, some Brahminical domination को बार-बार question कर. The self-respect movement included boycott of Brahmins in rituals like weddings, condemnation of Varnashrama dharma, burning of Manusmriti, and the non-Brahmins added suffixes like Dravida or Adi to their associations. So there is strong anti-Brahmin feeling by the movements led by these OBCs. This is the self-respect movement led by Periyar or E.V. Ramaswamy. Let us have a brief reference to this electoral mobilization. Backward classes politics in India has largely been related to electoral mobilization. You know, caste politics has become a very burning issue. And the creation of the support base among them by the political parties. You know, democratic ବଗିରେ ସବୁଠାରୁ important feature ହେଉଛି ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ democracy ର vote bank politics. So politicization of caste is the most important trend. Caste is no more a social concept. They are not confined only to the social activities. ତେଣୁ political parties ମାନେ ସେମାନଙ୍କର support base ପାଇଁ ବିଭିନ୍ନ other backward caste ମାନଙ୍କର organization को appeal କରେ. So other issues like reservation for the OBCs. What about the policy of reservation? That is also has become a political issue for the OBCs, or their mobilization on the class issue, like those related to the farmers, which get linked to the electoral politics. So the increasing participation of the other backward classes, their entry to the state legislature, parliament, is indicative of the empowerment of the backward classes. So there is a tremendous trend of electoral mobilization, that how they have impacted the political trend of the state. During the post-independence period, there have been attempts on the part of the individual leaders and political organizations to mobilize the backward classes into the participatory politics. So, references can be made to the leadership of Charan Singh, who was attempting also in North India to carve out his base among the backward classes in UP, the socialists, and also involved in the pursuit in North India. All over the country, there is a trend that the other backward classes, they have entered the politics of the country, and various political parties, they try to galvanize support, to draw support from these backward class organizations. Then I think, with a brief reference to this politics of reservation, I shall end up the discussion today. Politics of reservation means you must have heard about Mandal Commission. The Mandal Commission report, it was out during the VP Singh's government in 1990. And Mandal Commission report has recommended reservation of 27% of reservation for the OBCs in the central government jobs. It has made the reservation a national issue in Indian politics. Now, Mandal Commission has become one of the most important issues so far as the reservation politics is concerned. So, Mandal Commission issue in the report has drawn both its supporters and also its opponents. The appointment of Mandal Commission by the Janata Party government in 1990, was the result of the pressure of the backward classes leadership. Mandal Commission instituted because of the pressure of the other backward classes and their clout. And the demand for reservation for the backward classes, it was raised in the Constituent Assembly by P.R. Deshmukh. Even the most important leader of the Dalits, B.R. Ambedkar, they have raised this similar demand for the scheduled castes. And in order to articulate the reservation issues for the backward classes, he founded All India Backward Classes Federation on 26 January 1950. And within this federation, All India Backward Classes Federation, the difference grew between those having allegiance to the Congress on the ground on the one hand, and those who differ from the Congress and they owed allegiance to the socialist Lohiaist, Ramon Rohila and others. And that is why there is a split in this particular organization, this federation. And one particular group was headed by P.R. Spook, a Congress leader, and the other group was headed by R. Chandpuri. The Mandal Commission definitely has a very significant role so far as the reservation politics is concerned. It was the result of the consistent demand by the backward classes leadership to get Kaka Kalekar Commission's first backward class commission report accepted. କାରଣ ମଣ୍ଡଳ ପୂର୍ବରୁ କାକା କାଲେକର କମିଶନ ମଧ୍ୟ ବସିଥିଲା ଏଇ ରିଜର୍ଭେସନ ଉପରେ and Mandal Commission was instituted because of the heavy demand. Just Kaka Kalekar commission recommendation गुड़ाक accept करा जाऊ से demand उपरे को तर्जमा करिया पे Mandal Commission आउथरे बसला. And Kaka Kalekar Commission was also the result of the demand of such commission by backward class leadership at the time of independence. But Kaka Kalekar's recommendations of the class as the criterion for identification of the backward classes and rejection of the commission's report by the parliament led to the demand of appointment of other commissions. See, another commission बसेवार जो demand आसला से थरे हमारा Mandal Commission बसला. याना Kaka Kalekar Commission रे the very definition of backward class was challenged. That who should be considered as other backward classes. However, this reports, Mandal Commission report, has not settled the issue of reservation. Some new groups they have come up to demand and to be recognized themselves as OBCs. Can one group is social groups बाहर ले 7 क्लारे आमको से list भीतर कहीं OBC कराए नहीं. They also try to identify themselves as OBCs and they demand also reservation and all that. So it is naturally it's a continuous political question. So the mobilization of the OBCs naturally has been around two issues: their electoral participation and the reservation. Basically, these are both important issues for the OBCs. But whatever it may be, definitely the mobilization of the backward classes on the recognition as OBCs, appointment of backward class commission, politics related to them, support and opposition to them, they continue to remain relevant in the politics of social movement in India. You know, I mean, the particular movement besides the Dalit movement with reference to BSP and all that, then other backward class movements, and the rest discussions we shall continue in the other class. Probably the other class will be today it's 14th, on the 18th I think we shall again meet, and another two classes I shall engage with you on 18th and 19th as per your schedule. So with this, it's already 7 o'clock, more than 3 minutes more than 7. So I think I've tried my best to summarize and touch upon the important points for your reference. Thank you. Hello. Should I?
Again, sir.
I think I should close my discussion today. Okay. Thank you for your patient listening. So I wish you happy Independence Day for tomorrow. Thank you.